Good morning, and welcome to Sunday Soulday, weekly fuel for your mind, body, and soul. Today we have Ashley Ellington Brown, an author of the multi-award winning guide, A Beautiful Morning, How a Morning Ritual Can Feed Your Soul and Transform Your Life. She is also a freelance writer for more than 20 years, and Ashley also writes on the blog Joy Detectives. Ashley, thank you so much for blessing Sunday Soulday, and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm honored that y'all asked me to be here.
Absolutely. Hi, Allie. How are you?
Hi, Damesha. Hi, Ashley. Good morning. Thank you for being a soul fueler.
Yes.
Our new merch.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for representing. Allie, you look beautiful this morning. I am beyond thrilled, and I'm going to do my best to hold myself together through this interview because Ashley Brown does not know how much she has helped me in my journey. And I remember after having children, my first child, I was just not feeling like myself, like most mothers don't, transitioning, from my single life, to then now being a mother and having a child. And I remember very quickly after I had my second child, and I felt even worse because my hormones were all over the place. And I was also during the time in a relationship that was abusive and toxic, just to be completely transparent. And I just felt, very distant from my inner self. And so I remember coming across her book, and her book was so beautiful. And I remember grabbing it and saying, God, this is exactly how I want to feel. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And when I read the book, oh my goodness, it was just a game changer for me because I had to remember that I needed to pour into myself, that I needed to make myself a priority again. And as a new mother, it's so difficult to do that, but I just cannot thank you enough. Your book really changed my life in so many ways. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes to bless the show. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that really makes me feel good. I can't tell you how incredible it is to hear that from you. And because of what you're doing, you're being so inspirational and sharing, and everything that y'all have been doing on this podcast, and your journey that you've talked about is just really incredible. So I'm really proud that I was able to play, a part in it. That's really cool.
Amazing. Well, I want to just kick off this beautiful conversation and just tell us a little bit more about your journey as an author. Like, I am so amazed when authors like you can bring other inspiring women into a book and then just create a masterpiece. And so I'm just so I want to learn more about your journey. Like, what inspired you to even start writing, and how has your writing style evolved over time?
Mm-hmm. Well, I always wanted to be a writer. I'm a lot like you, Demisha. I think you said before that you were a huge reader as a kid, and that was me. Like, I read everything I could get my hands on, and just always wanted to also be an author. And at the age of 7, I wrote my first book, and illustrated it and all that stuff, and but as I got older, I really got the message that being an author was not something that was a practical career, and that I needed to do something with writing that would make money, and be more responsible and that sort of thing. So I ended up going into advertising and PR and corporate communications and that sort of thing, and had a steady job for, a while. And really, then I went freelance and continued to do that work, and kind of forgot about writing for myself for a long time. And then I took uh, a writing course actually online with Martha Beck, who, I don't know if y'all know her, but she is in the book. She is like the original life coach. And she created this writing program called Write into Light with Elizabeth Gilbert also. And I was a huge follower of hers. And so I did that program, and it was this really transformative thing where we really went deep inside ourselves and kind of peeled back the layers and got way down deep into the muck and then turned that into something helpful, And during that time, I wasn't even really thinking about writing as for other people. It just was something that I wanted to do for myself. And then during the course, this also coincided with me having started my kind of morning ritual routine. And I got the idea to write the book. And I think with the support of everybody else in that group, began to believe in myself that I could really write it, and some of those people are in the book as well. But it was definitely, I had a lot of doubt about it. So it took a lot of courage for me to kind of actually produce it and write it and put it out there.
Wow, thank you so much. And I'm familiar because I remember her from the book, and then and I love Elizabeth Gilbert, so it's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Tell me a little bit about a beautiful morning. You mentioned you were working on your own kind of morning ritual, but how did you come up with the idea? And tell me a little bit more about just how you were able to grab all of those women. I mean, there's so many different unique, voices in there, from moms to entrepreneurs to, coaches, and so many just amazing women. How did you pull that together?
Well, so the way that I got the idea was, it was literally like one of those, they talk about divine downloads, right? Where things just sort of pop into your head. And part of my morning ritual is that I go outside every morning with my coffee. And so I was sitting outside drinking my coffee, and I was just sort of reflecting on how much better I felt now that I was doing these things in the morning for myself. I'd been doing it for, probably a good 6 months, I would say. And then all of a sudden I started thinking about these other people like Martha Beck and Elizabeth Gilbert and all these other people who I admired. And I thought, I wonder if they have something that they do. And, surely they do, because they're living these really amazing lives, right? And so they must be sort of starting off with intention and purpose every day and kind of driving their life. And so then I started thinking, wow, I'd really like to know all those stories of all these different women that I follow and that I know. And then I thought, well, that would be a really interesting book. And then I was like, I could write that book. And then I was like, no way, I can't write that book. But I couldn't let go of the idea. And so I started by just reaching out to a couple of people that I knew personally who I thought would be good, just to see, do y'all have a morning ritual? And would you be interested in being interviewed and being part of this project? And they all said yes, and so I made a list of everyone, and it was probably about 25 people total on the list. And I started reaching out to them and asking them if they would be involved. And some of them were really aspirational, like I had Brene Brown on the list. And actually her people were really nice. They answered me back and they said, thank you so much for asking, but she's actually writing her own book right now. And so she doesn't have time, but good luck, that sort of thing, which I was like, wow, that was really cool. But I got most of the people that I asked, and some of them were people that I knew in real life. And then some of them were people that I had worked with, and some were people that I just followed online, or had read their books or just came across them and thought they were really inspiring. And a couple of them were actually suggested by other people that I talked to be in the book. So I really wanted it to be all for women, and I wanted it to be a range of different types of women, because I wanted anybody to be able to kind of find themselves in the book. And so then when I did it, I just reached out to each one of them and set up an interview, and I interviewed them over the phone, and I recorded it so that I could really just transcribe it. And I edited it just as much as needed to be for clarity, and then left everything in their own voice, so that when you read each chapter, you really kind of get their actual insights, not filtered through me, which I thought was important.
Oh my gosh. First of all, I love the divine downloads, and I love everything that, just got you to this point. And And just, I'm so grateful that you listened and that you went forth with it. And you're so right. Like, one thing I loved about the book, and thank you for reminding me, is in the beginning, you divided out, like, if you're a parent, go here. If you're, this, go there. Like, and I love that because I went immediately to those sections as a new parent, and then ended up just reading the whole book. And by the way, I've read it like 3 times because it's that good. And I, have to mention my favorite one in the book is the one, and I'm completely blanking on the beautiful woman's name, but she talks about having a tea set from her grandmother. And she says that, a lot of times we, cherish these items, cherish all of these, things, that are man-made, and nothing is more important. No man-made item is more important than us. That really resonated with me because you hear the one from the airplane where it's like, put your oxygen mask on first, that's not going to work for me. I'm going to put on my kids first. I'm going to tell you right now, like, I'm breaking.
Right. I mean, what parent wouldn't? I know. I always think that.
But that one really, and I'll never forget it because I remember to myself, I said, I have to put myself first. And that was when I made that decision to stop, really not necessarily living fully for others, but just putting everyone else's needs before mine, And so, wow, just, that's amazing. Amazing.
Actually, good for you for just putting yourself out there and asking people, right? It doesn't hurt. I feel so inspired to continue doing that with our podcast. We have done that, and are just so amazed at the response that we get. Either we get a yes or we get a no and a window's opened. So thank you for that. I'm so excited to ask you this next question because it hits personally. So you've shared that that you were never a morning person and that you would sleep as late as you could and then you'd scramble to get ready. Hi. But you came to realize how transformational a morning ritual can be. So can you tell us what led you to this awareness and how morning rituals changed your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm definitely not a morning person. I, throughout most of my life, would sleep like till 10 a.m., like before jobs, before children, obviously. But on the weekends or whatever, before children, I would just sleep really late. I just loved it. And sleep was always really important to me. Like, I'm not one of those people that can go without much sleep. Like, I need my good 8 hours. So I was, a mom. And after I became a mom in 2004, I had postpartum depression and I eventually recovered from that, but I still had a lot of anxiety and I was always looking for ways to get over that, get past that, make myself feel better. And when I would sleep in, because I was a stay-at-home mom, and so, I could sleep in a little bit, but then I always had a point where I had to get up and get ready for the day. And so I would hit the snooze, and then I would have to jump out of bed and race around. And when you start your day like that, you're constantly kind of behind, and you're just feeling stressed and out of control. And I just realized that it was making me feel impatient and stressed and anxious all day long. And it was making things worse. So I thought, well, what if I just try to change that little bit about how I wake up and, just try to do it a little more gently so that I'm not, stressing myself out immediately. So instead of hitting the snooze button, I started just lying in bed for a minute and doing some deep breathing and just taking it really slow, like for just 30 seconds, not even a lot, and then getting up slowly and then going on with my day. And that was so much more beneficial than that extra 5 minutes of like half sleep that you get when you hit the snooze button, that I was like, wow, this is really amazing. And so then I thought, well, what if I, give myself like a little bit of time to actually like get up and do something that is positive, that can set me up for a better day. And so I started, then setting my alarm a little bit earlier and waking up just like 10 or 15 minutes earlier, just so that I could do a few things. And that was just really transformative for me. I became, I still had plenty of anxiety and all that stuff. And, things still went wrong in my day. I mean, it's not a magic bullet, but I started off, up here rather than down here. And so I was able to, if things happened, I would dip down, but I could kind of get back a little bit better. And so it was just really, really powerful and helpful.
Yeah, I can relate to how much that change helps us throughout the day to fuel up in the morning and just do a little tiny bit different and not hit that snooze button. I was the same way, getting up at 10 if I didn't have to be somewhere, and I started scheduling things earlier and earlier, and then I would get up and do the morning ritual, gratitude, and those sort of things. And it's been so helpful. I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I'm so proud of the progress that I've made towards being more of a morning person. So I want to hear more about your book. Can you share one story within your book that stands out to you that really impacted you personally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to choose one because they're all so amazing. I think Carrie Wilt's story, where she talks about how she was like a super mom. She had a fully packed schedule. She was super, super busy, and she was putting everybody ahead of herself. And then she started, realizing that she was just completely overwhelmed and she was burning out. And so she started taking some time in the morning for herself to look at devotionals and then journal a little bit about them. And then she developed this practice where on Sundays she looks back over the whole week, and then she, sees themes that emerge from the different days, and then she makes extra notes about those, and has these beautiful colorful journals where she draws and she highlights and all of this stuff. And it began to wake up in her a sense of what her purpose was. And she realized that she used to love to write, and she hadn't written in forever. And her great grandmother actually is Frances Hodgson Burnett, who wrote Secret Garden and A Little Princess and all of those books. And she would reread her grandmother's things and think, wow, these are really powerful and helpful, and they're making me feel better. And, the power of writing to help other people. And she was like, boy, I would really like to be able to do that. And she started to write about her responses to what her great grandmother had written, and went on this path. And so, now she has a blog and she has a podcast and she's writing a book and all of those things. I mean, so it's completely transformed that part of her. And I just think that's really inspiring.
Thank you for sharing that. And it sounds really inspiring. That's awesome. Thanks.
I so remember that one. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that one too. We ask our guests the same question, and I'm always so interested to hear their answers. But what are some ways that you fuel your mind, body, and soul? Like, through maybe your morning rituals. Like, what are your morning rituals? Can you share some of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have a bunch of ways that I do that, but like daily, my morning ritual is really important to me, and I try to do it as much as I can. Some mornings are just super busy and I don't have time to fit a lot in, but I'm really lucky in that I work from home, and so I have a flexible schedule, and so I'm able to take a little bit of time for myself most mornings. And I want people to know, though, that you don't have to spend 30 minutes or an hour, which is usually what I try to do, to get a benefit from it. You can do it in just 5 minutes. So don't feel, as I describe this, don't feel like, oh, well, I'll never be able to manage that. That's not going to work for me, because you can have something beneficial even just in a couple of minutes. But I start slow before, I get out of bed. I do some deep breathing. I do some stretches. I say some affirmations. And then if I have the time, I don't do this every day. It's a goal to do it every day. But I like to journal a little bit. I do morning pages, which are something that Julia Cameron introduced in her book, The Artist's Way. And it's just a way of getting everything out of your head and dumping it all on the page so you can kind of clear yourself out. And it's just 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness writing. So it's super easy. And then I go and I stretch, because I'm always really tight in the morning. So I lay down on the mat, I do some yoga stretches, And then I try to meditate. And that for me, when people think meditation, like mine does not really look like that, but I sit and I try. And, I try to clear my mind. I try to feel energy coming in from, the earth and from spirit. And I try to get a little centered, and, I try to hand over anything that is, a burden, and kind of get it off me, and ask for help, and set some intentions and that sort of thing. And then I make my coffee, and I take that out in the backyard, and I stand barefoot in the grass, and I face the sun, and I try to get out there, as early as possible so that I can get early morning sunlight, because, not only is sunlight just wonderful, but it's an actual mood booster because it increases your serotonin production. And when you get it early in the morning, it also regulates your body clock. So it helps you sleep better, and it just kind of gets you more balanced. So that is probably my favorite part of it. And that is the thing that if I don't have time to do anything else, I will go and do that, because just being outside for a moment, gets you out of the house. It gets you out of like the hustle and bustle of getting ready in the morning. And it just gives me a minute to just kind of breathe and get grounded. And it's really powerful. The other things that I do that are not morning ritual related, I love to spend time with friends. I've made a point over the last few years of trying to, most of my friends live in other cities. And so I've tried to travel to visit with them in person, because, it's so hard to keep up your relationships as you have a kid. And now that my son is older, I have a little bit more time. And so I can go and hang out with them. And that's been really powerful and wonderful, because, female friendships are so important. And we kind of tend to let those go, a lot when we just are so busy with everything else.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. Love that you do that. Allie actually got really intentional about doing that just probably this last year, right, Allie?
Yeah.
Like hanging with female friends. And I love that. Like, and it's so hard when we're, just in our lives, and in the hustle and bustle of it, and getting really intentional. It sounds like you're just very intentional about how you're spending your time, like what you're doing in the morning, getting that, that vitamin D early on, and grounding yourself. And you mentioned the artist's way. That is, it was an inspiration for me. I actually don't journal in the morning, but I journal at night. And so that was my inspiration for kind of dumping like anything that I wanted to release in me. And so I don't do the full long form, but I always pick like 3 to 5 things that I just want to like get out of me, so then I can sleep peacefully. And so that's how I journal. I've been journaling, gosh, since I was able to write. I think at 5, I started keeping journals and reading. So I love your morning routine. I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit and ask you, tell us a little bit about your writing process, because I am always so fascinated by authors and how they all have different writing process. And tell us a little bit more. Like, do you have any rituals around like getting creative, or how do you get your inspiration when you're writing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was writing the book, I really had to kind of come up with some new routines, because it was very different from work writing. I was trying to recover my own voice instead of writing for somebody else. And so I quickly figured out that what worked for the other stuff didn't work for the book. So, I have a home office and a desk and a computer and everything. And I had to literally not go in that office to write the book. I had to write it somewhere else. I had to move around the house. I just kind of like every day I kind of pick a different place and sit in a different chair and write on the laptop to get my mind sort of out of that work mode and more into a channeling creative mode. And then a lot of times I actually had to write by hand, because when I grew up, we didn't have computers and we didn't have laptops. And so all through school, all through college, and in the first couple of years of my career, I wrote everything out by hand. And so I was used to brainstorming and being and having it just go directly through. And it took a long time to learn how to write on the computer. So I realized that that when I was writing on the computer, that was all work stuff. And so it was more formal, and it just didn't have the right vibe that I wanted. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a lot of that book by hand and then had to, input it after that. So I think, and that actually, it's a process for getting into is it left brain? I always forget. The left brain is the creative one. But that's a process for sort of switching over, is to use your hand, which is one of the reasons I think that Julia Cameron says to not do like morning pages on a computer, but to use handwriting, because that is like a deep connection into your unconscious, subconscious, creative side. Yeah. But there was also a lot of just discipline and, get it done kind of energy, because I was really nervous about not finishing it. I started it, and then I was like, okay, I'm writing a book. I want to publish this book. I have this great idea. If I don't finish it and put it out there, I'm going to feel really bad. So I just really pushed myself, and I set up a schedule and I stuck to it. And, I had deadlines, and I had decided when I wanted to be done by, when I wanted to publish it. And I worked backwards from there so that I could make sure that, I made everything on time and got it finished.
Oh my goodness. Like amazing. And that's, you remind me when you said, like, I just, had to have the discipline, thinking about the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, when he talks about resistance, and just resisting, like the urge of like doing something else, but just writing, even if your writing is terrible, just to like stick to a routine and write. And so I love that you mentioned that. Just incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I love your ability to have discipline and to pivot. You had to change kind of your style, and it can be so hard because we want to stay in our, ways that have worked for us, and we have to often pivot. So I think that's great. I want to ask you about kind of the impact you hope to have on your readers with your books, and what message or takeaway do you aim to leave with your audience through your writing?
Yeah. I really hope that readers are, uplifted and encouraged and supported and empowered to take time for themselves and to, steer their lives with purpose so that they can create a happier and a more fulfilling life, because so many times we just we're riding the waves of what happens to us, and we're reacting all the time. And, if you take a moment, and it doesn't have to be in the morning, it can be anytime, but just take a moment to get still and listen to your inner voice and think about what's going on and where you want to be and how you want to be and what you want your life to look like, then that can really help you steer toward it. You can't get there if you don't know where you're going. Right. So I hope that it gives them that, help to do that. And I actually, in the book, I have the last chapter, or close to the end, I guess, is about how to create your own ritual. And it has takeaways in it. Like I spelled them out, it's like, these are the takeaways I want you to have. But, the main thing is that you deserve to take that time for yourself. It's important. It's not selfish. It's actually vital, and it actually benefits everybody around you, because when you are filled, you have more to give, and, like I say in the book, it's a morning ritual is like one of the highest forms of self-care, because it's literally putting yourself first. You're putting yourself very first in the day before anybody else, and you're fueling yourself up so that you have more to give, so that you can keep going and keep giving, like we all do all the time. And there is, and I guess this is true of everything, with morning rituals or anything else, there's no wrong way to do it. Whatever works for you is best for you. So if it's in the morning, that's great. If it needs to be in the evening because you have little kids and they take you from the very beginning of your day, until they go to sleep, then that's fine. Do it in the evening, do it for 5 minutes, do it while you're doing something else. One of the women in the book has this great practice where she's in her shower and she pictures all of the water just washing all of the negative energy out of her and then filling herself back up with positive energy. And that is a tremendous practice. It doesn't take any extra time at all. So there's all sorts of ways that you can do it. It's not a one size fits all sort of thing. And everybody can find something that works in their life.
Such good reminders that your ritual can be as long or short as you have time, and you can pivot to the evening if you need to. But it's essential to fuel up, right? We talked, Damesha, about it not being selfish, it being self-full, to put ourselves first so we can give what we have to others in a loving way and not in a resentful way. If we have nothing left to give, we will still give, but it'll be resentful. Yeah. And I just love the idea of getting into, the ritual of listening to ourselves, just taking a minute to listen to ourselves, because that will guide us. That sets the stage for everything, is to get into that space of self-trust. Such a wonderful reminder. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I have to say, those takeaways that you kind of shared is exactly the impact that it had on me. And just the reminder to really put myself first, like whatever that looked like for me. And I think like what I love so much about the book is there's so many like just inspirational starting points, that I could try. And I tried a bunch, I was like, I'm going to take, page 20, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this. And it was so inspiring and just, and honestly, just fun, to just, try different things for myself. And I love that you say it's not a one size fits all, and whether it works for you in the morning or afternoon or in the evening. It's a large reason why Allie and I, started Sunday Soulday, because we want people to fuel their mind, body, and soul, and to remember yourself first, because we are the starting point to everything. And if we cannot fuel ourselves up to give, then we're really not giving fully. And, I do believe that we're placed on this earth, our creator placed us on this earth to do three things, to love, to be loved, and to help one another. And we have to first love and help ourselves before we can do any of that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my goodness, just so many. I'm like, just this, I could talk to you about this book all day. But are there any specific authors that, have just influence you, maybe your writing style, maybe your journey that you want to share? I know you said you're a fan of Brene Brown, and you mentioned Elizabeth Gilbert. Are there any others?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was writing the book, I really had a tone that I wanted it to have. And that was, gentle and encouraging and supportive. And there were several books that I had read maybe 100 times, maybe more, I don't know, that I immediately thought of. And I was like, I want it to be like that. And so one of the ones that's one of my favorites is called Gift from the Sea. I don't know if y'all know that book. Oh, it's fantastic. It's by Anne Morrow Lindbergh, who was married to Charles Lindbergh. But she was a writer herself. And they've also published all of her journals, which are just incredible. She had this really fantastic life, but she writes in this book. It's a very short book and it's very simple, but she likens the stages of a woman's life to different seashells. And she talks about, all the different stages that we go through. And it's just, her writing it's lyrical and but it's really clear. And the wisdom is just, it'll blow your mind. It's just amazing. So that's one of my absolute favorite books. And I try to reread it like at least every year. And every year I'm like, oh yeah, or I see something that it hadn't hit me yet because I hadn't reached that stage of my life yet, So it's a really wonderful book. And then another one, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is just full of, life-changing practices and all of that. And she also has that really helpful, gentle tone. And then another one is called Simple Abundance, a daybook of comfort and joy. And that is by Sarah Ban Bronick. And the one that I got, and somebody recommended this to me, and I found it used because she'd written it in the 90s. And so there are a lot of references to like 90s era things. And then she recently updated it a couple of years ago, I think. So you can find it online now pretty easily. But it's got an entry for every day of the year. And it's all sorts of uplifting and inspiring essays about ways to be happier in your life, and it's nothing like earth shattering, but it's just really supportive and nurturing. And it feels like having a cup of tea with a friend sort of thing. So those are 3 books that really, I really recommend and I really loved. And I kind of tried to mimic their tone and their content in a way so that I could also hopefully impart that same feeling to my readers. And there's so many other books that I read. I actually have a whole list on the Joy Detectives website of resources of books about happiness and life and all of that sort of thing, because I'm a huge reader, right? Like we talked about. And so I'm constantly reading all these other books, and I need to keep adding stuff to that list because it's like, oh, and this one, oh, and this one. But those are my top 3.
Oh my goodness. I haven't read 2 of the 3 that you mentioned and cannot wait to check them out. And that energy that you described and that tone definitely was felt as I was reading the book. So just kudos to you. Amazing job.
Awesome.
Ashley, my next question is a 2-part. So the first part is, what have been some of the most significant challenges you've faced as an author? And then ways that you have overcome. And then the other side is what are some of the most memorable achievements in your writing career that have brought you the most joy or fulfillment?
Yeah. So, my most significant challenge, I would say, is self-doubt, because I really wasn't sure that I could write a book that I would consider good enough. I'm a recovering perfectionist and, I've got these ridiculously high standards for myself. And as a writer, as an editor, all of those things, I really wanted it to be really, really good. And so I just had to kind of forge through that and just see what happened, put it out there, see what I could do, write it, see how good I could get it, and then see if I did it, And one of the things that I did also was to use professionals to help me. So I used a professional editor and I used a professional book designer so that I felt like, with the editor especially, using her and then having her tell me, okay, this is good, gave me that external approval that I needed, of somebody else saying, okay, yeah, she was a legit editor. And she's like, yeah, this is quality writing. This is good. I was like, okay, all right. Then I can feel good about it. And, using the designer, I wanted it to look, I self-published, but I didn't want it to look like a self-published book. So I used, all of the things that I could to make sure that it had a really good, quality look to it and feel to it. And I was really happy with how it turned out. And then the moments that brought me the most joy, I would say the first was when I first got those printed books in the mail. I got the box of them from the printer and held my book in my hand, because that was such like the realization of a dream, that I actually had this book that had my name on it. And then another one was when I actually saw it on a bookstore shelf. It only happened a couple of times because I went to specific bookstores, one in my hometown and then one here, and asked them, to carry it, and gave them information about it or whatever. And then it was up to them whether or not they would, but then they actually did order some. And so then I went in and I saw it on the shelf, and I was actually right next to Brene Brown because, my last name is Brown. And I was like, yes. So that was really exciting. And then also when it won awards, I was really ecstatic about that, because I just, I put it up and I put it out there and I thought, okay, I think this is okay. I think this is pretty good. And then when it won those awards, I was like, wow, other people think this is good too. And so that was really just like a dream come true. That was really amazing. And then I think the best thing though is anytime, like, Damesha said, anytime that I hear from somebody that it helped them, because that was the whole point. Yes, it was a dream of mine to write a book, but this particular book was to help people, to share what I learned that really helped me so that it can help other people. And whenever I hear from somebody that it worked, that it really made a difference for them, that's huge.
I can only imagine, like, just getting to hold the book and then see it in bookstores and then to win awards. But what you share is so common with a lot of the guests that we have, that the most rewarding part is knowing that it helped somebody, that we were of service to somebody. And I also wanted to thank you for sharing about the self-doubt. It is something that so many of us have in common and can relate to. And you sharing that and then being able to push through, I think is just really helpful and inspiring. And I too am a recovering perfectionist, so I get it.
It's fun, right? Yeah.
No, I am like, I have chills because I can only imagine what it feels like to see your book, like not only get it and hold it in your hand, but then to see it on bookshelves. Like I have shopped in probably hundreds of bookstores, and it's always been a dream of mine to be an author as well. And I'm actually working on my first children's book, which I will finally share because it's almost finished. But I am just thrilled, and we are working on another children's book, Allie and I will share that because we have the concept down now and it's all written. But I can't wait for that moment, and it's a dream. So I can only imagine what that feels like, and and how that, has just impacted you. And you have impacted so many people, I mean, I'm one of them, and I have given your book to probably like at least 20 women. I've applied for so many. I'm not kidding. Like but because let me tell you, I have to just segue to this, but like I worked in tech, and a lot of women like are in service-oriented roles in tech. Not saying that there aren't women, coding and doing all these other things, but in most of the roles, like they're in very service-oriented roles, whether they're recruiting, whether they're marketing, like it's, very service-oriented. And so they are always putting others before themselves. And when I would see that, I would just hand them your book. I'd like, I have a good book for you to read, So,
she's not kidding. When I first met Damesha, she told me that this was her favorite book. Yeah. And then she wrote me in the middle of the night when you had written back and was as happy as I've ever seen her. Like, this is not just a joke because we're talking to you. Literally, your book, and she reads all the time, is her book that changed her life to be where she is today.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Now I have chills. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
No, and thank you for sharing that, Allie, because I think people think I'm joking when I say like I'm an avid reader and I'm always recommending books. And this is like one of my top recommendations, this and the 4 Agreements. So, well, my gosh, like, I can only imagine, like, as a self-publishing author, like, do you have advice for just aspiring authors like Allie and I? What advice would you offer them, like, just finding their voice and navigating the self-publishing world or even publishing world?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, first off, believe in yourself, because everybody has a story and yours is valuable. Everybody has a story and they're all really important. They can all help somebody. And even if your story only helps one other person, it's worth it to tell it. And don't hold back. I think a lot of people feel like they want to write a book, but they don't feel like they're a writer. I at least knew I'm a writer. I can write. I know I can write. I just didn't know if I could write how I wanted it to come out. But a lot of people feel like they're not even a good writer. And so they don't do it. And, that's what editors are for. Like, don't hold back because you feel like you don't have that particular skill. work with somebody else to get your words down in a form that feels good to you, and don't edit while you write, because that is a different part of your brain. So get all the creative stuff out, write it all down, and do what Anne Lamott calls the first draft. And then you can edit it after it's done, because otherwise you'll just shut yourself down. Your creative part would be like, nope, not gonna go anymore if you're gonna be mean to me, And don't think about the selling or the publishing while you're writing either, because I think a lot of people jump to, oh, will this sell? Can I sell it to a publisher? And they're thinking about it from the back in, and that will also shut you down, and it will end up not being a fully authentic product maybe. And so instead, try to, write for yourself, write about something that's meaningful to you. And then one trick that I've heard is to picture a specific reader that you're talking to. So maybe it's somebody that you know in real life, or you can create an imaginary reader that would be your perfect reader that you want to reach. And then write like you're talking just to that person, so that you kind of tune out all of the noise and you're not thinking about, pleasing everybody or whatever. Like, you have to choose your audience and then go directly for that audience. Like, I mainly wrote my book for women, and men have read it and men have gotten a lot out of it, but I didn't try to do it for everybody. It was mainly for them. The other thing that you can do that I've found really helpful is, once you have your manuscript to a point where you feel like it's done or close to it, give it to a group of trusted people. It's called beta readers. And you choose out different people that are in your target audience, and you ask them to read it. And then you can give them specific questions, or you can just ask them to give you feedback. But that's a really good way to find out if there's any points that don't make sense to somebody else, because like in your head, what you're trying to say, but it doesn't always come across to other people. So that really helped me, because I made some significant changes in my book after I did that process with my readers. And then, self-publishing is really easy these days, and there's all sorts of support for it. There's all sorts of tips and books and practices that are out there, courses even, that will show you how to do it. But it can be just as easy as going on Amazon and making an ebook and hitting publish, and you're done. It doesn't have to be super involved. So don't let that stop you from doing it. And there are also hybrid publishers who are sort of in between traditional and self-publishing, and they will work with you and they'll handle like the production of it and the promotion of it, but you still have a lot more control than you would if you did a traditional publisher. So that's a good option too.
Oh my God, just incredible advice, incredible. And I'm definitely I love the advice that you said, pick a beta group, and really allow them to read it. Like, I would have skipped that step. So thank you so much for saying that. And the advice that you gave about picking a target audience, one of our other soul fuelers was on, and he's an entrepreneur and works in marketing. And he was saying that when you're building a company, to do that, pick one person and then find more people like that person, and so just such solid advice. I love that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing that can really help when you're doing it, if you have doubt, like I did, is to visualize your actual completed book. Like picture it in your hands, like picture that moment of receiving the printed book and holding it, because that's really powerful. And I printed out a mock spine of my book with the name of the book and my name on it. And I went to Barnes and Noble and I stuck it with tape on one of the spines of the book on the shelf, like where it would be, so that I could just like look at it for a minute and be like, okay, there's it. That's where it's going to go. Like just doing like a little bit of manifesting, a little bit of like,
yeah.
I'm sorry. That's amazing. Like, I'm so doing that. Like, today, it's happening. Like, I'm going to go to the bookstore in Gilbert. So if you guys see me there, I'm literally going, oh my gosh, I love that. Like, the visualization is so important. I actually did that with my ebook. I wrote an ebook, short ebook on self-awareness. And and self-reflection. And I did that. Like, I was like, how do I want to visualize? And I remember I get my energy from trees and nature. And so that's what the cover looks like. And so I visualized that cover. And I didn't have the title fully yet, but I visualized the cover. And so the visualization component, thank you for throwing that one in too, because it's so powerful.
Yeah, I've been doing the same, because there are moments where the motivation goes down and I just visualize that book. And it's interesting because there's a part where you said, don't think ahead to the end, like of how it's going to be received. I see that as taking away some of the authenticity, like really write from your heart and your own intuition, and not worrying about what anyone else thinks. And then the other piece of visualization and manifestation, I think, is so important. And it has absolutely helped me to keep going, because I can see it. I can see the color of the cover. I can see, all of that. And so thanks. Great reminder. Such good tips too. So can you share some of the details of your any upcoming projects or books that are in the pipeline, and what readers can expect for future work, and where can people find you?
Okay. Yeah. It's funny, writing that book for me was a lot like childbirth. and I feel like I'm still recovering, because it just was like, it was this huge effort, and it took a lot. So it kind of like took over my life for a while. So I don't know. I feel like I will write another book. I just don't know what that will be yet. So meanwhile, I'm doing, still some writing for myself on my blog. And then I'm also focusing a lot on wellness and happiness. And so I've started doing happiness consultations with people to try to help them access some of try to share some of the knowledge that I've gleaned over these, almost 20 years of actively trying to be happier and make myself feel better. And I'm doing that through the Joy Detectives website that I have, joydetectives.com. And I've also kind of a work in progress. I'm writing for a travel blog, which is fun. And I'm working with some other people on some other projects that I'm hoping to get off the ground next year. And so I'm kind of a little bit of an open-ended year coming up, but it's going to be fun to see what ends up shaking out. But in terms of finding me, you can find me at, I have two websites, abeautifulmorningbook.com for the book. And it also has a bunch of articles and things on there about morning rituals that can just be helpful just for a quick read. And then also the Joy Detectives website, which is a blog with a bunch of different articles primarily about happiness, and also a resource page, as well as the happiness consultation information. And then on Instagram, I am Joy Detective Ashley Brown.
Thank you, Ashley. This has been such a lovely interview. I feel even more inspired to continue on my journey as a future author. I just want to thank you so much for coming on, and for just meeting Damesha's dream. I mean, I know she can thank you herself, but just watching you on here, and to be someone that Damesha just loves and looks up to, I really appreciate getting to witness this.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
I'm beaming over here, and you have fulfilled a dream of mine. You were on my list of people when I first, thought of this podcast. You were in the top 10. And so I absolutely am just so grateful that you blessed Sunday Soulday, and that you just gave us so much. I mean, you fueled us up in so many ways, especially me. And I'm so grateful. And we'll continue to share your book with so many people, because I just love it. I love it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was really wonderful to be able to talk with y'all. And I feel really honored to have been here and to have you say the things that you did. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Everyone, you have a beautiful Sunday. And before we hop off, please share in the comments your favorite part of this interview. I know I have mine, so I can't wait to put it in the comments. Have a wonderful Sunday.